The following program is presented by the Metropolitan Library Service Agency.
Hi, welcome to All About Kids, a program focusing on the interests of young people and some of the issues affecting them. Parents, teachers, and librarians seem to be concerned that many junior high school students aren't very interested in reading. Today, we're going to take a look at a couple of junior high school programs which dispel some of these ideas. Students and faculty at Wayzata West Junior High School in Wayzata and Folwell Junior High in Minneapolis enthusiastically participated in today's program. They're excited about reading and reading activities, and when you look at their program, we think you will be too. Let's go first to Wayzata West.
Hello, my name is Andy, and welcome to the dating book game. Here's your host, Judy Bloom. Thank you very much, Andy, and hello to all you folks out there. Now let's meet our lucky bookettes. Book number 1. This is Remember Me to Herald Square by Paula Danziger. Book number 2. This is The Ghost of Departure Point by Eve Bunting. And last but not least, Izzy Willy-Nilly by Cynthia Voigt. Now let's meet our lucky bachelor, Mr. Ryan Rabideau. Okay, would you like to meet your bookettes?
Sure.
Okay, book number 1.
Hello, Ryan.
Hello.
Number 2.
Hi, Ryan.
And number 3.
Bonjour, Ryan.
Whoa. Okay.
Okay, do you have your questions ready?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Okay. The things that I look for in a book are that they're interesting and about people my own age, and also that they have adventure. Book 1. What's your book like?
My book is about a 14-year-old girl who lives in New York City, and her family has a 15-year-old farm boy come and live with them for the summer. To keep them busy, they go all over New York on a scavenger hunt.
Okay. Book 3, same question.
My book is about a 15-year-old girl who gets in a car accident with her boyfriend, and she is crippled from it, and this book tells what she goes through in life.
Okay. Number 2. I judge a book by its cover. What's your cover like?
My cover is very scary and creepy. It's very mysterious.
Okay, number 1, same question.
On the outside, my book cover is very boring, but on the inside, I'm very exciting and very, very good.
Okay.
Well, I bet this is the moment that you've all been waiting for. Ryan, have you chose who you'd like to read?
Yes, I sure have. The bookette that I chose had a wonderful description of her cover. The bookette that I choose is number 1.
Well, I'm sure you enjoy reading her, but first, let's meet our other bookettes. Book number 2 is The Ghost of Departure Point. Thank you very much. And number 3, Izzy. Thank you. Now, book number 1. Oh, I'm sure you two will make a very good couple. Andy, would you like to tell us what they win? This young couple will win 2 gold book covers, but the grand prize is a trip to the Hennepin County Library. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.
This is Mike O, and he likes to read. My name is Doug B, and I'm a reading machine. This is Dan, my man, who knows he can because Mrs. C says he can. This is Eric E, who sits in the library while he studies history. If you go to the library, you will see us learning to rap like DMC. Go to the library, read a book, you can have as much fun as D and me. They have books, magazines, and movies to see when you go cruising to the library. Because you have peace and quiet at the library.
Hi, I'm Nate Letting, an 8th grader at Wayzata West Junior High. Our topic today is how do parents, teachers, and librarians get and keep kids reading? My guests today are all from Wayzata West Junior High. Mrs. Hammock, a mother, she is also associated with the IDEA program. Kenny Mielman, a student. Mrs. Coleman, a reading teacher. And also Mrs. Reinan, our librarian here at Wayzata West. Mrs. Hammock, did you read to your kids when they were little?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Do you think that there should be reading materials at home available for your kids, or do you think they should only learn in school?
I think the only way to instill the desire to read is to provide the materials at home. When my children were preschool, it also was one of our weekly activities to go to story hour at the local public library.
Okay. What did you do to encourage reading at home?
Well, I always had books around the house. As they got older, I tried to get magazines for the teenage years, and of course in the daily newspaper.
Okay. About how old were your kids when they started reading on their own?
I think between 4 and 5 years old.
Okay. How did you keep them reading when they were teens?
I don't think you can keep them reading. If you haven't instilled the desire to read in them, by that time, it's not going to make any difference.
Yeah, okay. Do you mind sharing your favorite book with us?
My favorite book is The Cradle Will Fall by Mary Higgins Clark. I particularly like her plots, the mystery, and the fast-moving action in the book.
Okay. Thank you. Kenny, what did you like or dislike about your parents nagging you to read?
I didn't really like my parents to nag me on about reading. I always liked to read on my own.
Okay. So you did read in your spare time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you think reading on your own helped you with your homework?
Yes, when I came up to a word that I didn't know, it kind of increased my vocabulary because I would always look it up.
Okay. What was the single most useful thing your parents did to get you to read?
My parents, they always read to me at night, and then she always took me to the library, and then she always had reading material in the home.
Okay. Please tell us what your favorite book is.
My favorite book is Halfbacks Don't Wear Pearls by Mary Blakesley.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Mrs. Coleman, what did you do to encourage students to read?
Well, one of the things I do is I try to provide a lot of reading material in the classroom. All around the room there are lots of books that students can select. In addition, I always provide time for reading. Students in junior high are so busy with activities and sports, and they just don't take the time to read, so I allow always 15 to 20 minutes a day to read. In addition, I try to get them to where books are. I've taken them, we go down to the library in the school here, and we even in the fall took a field trip over to the public library in Wayzata.
Okay. What kind of material do you recommend for your students?
Well, I try to let students choose what they want to read. I think students in junior high have things that they want to read, and I let them read what they want to. In addition, if they have a particular interest or a particular author, I might help suggest books for them.
Okay. Will you share with us your favorite book?
Well, my favorite book is Dicey Song by Cynthia Boyd, and this was also a Newbery winner in 1983. This is a story about 4 children who go to live with their grandmother after their mother becomes mentally ill and their father has taken off. And it's a story of their survival in this new home.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Reinan, what can a librarian do to encourage students to read?
Well, first of all, we try to encourage the classes to come down and visit the library and quite regularly, so the students are in the habit of being there and shopping around for books. And then I try to provide a great amount of material, magazines and books that they'll be interested in on lots of different subjects. And I have lists of authors who write certain types of books so that they can focus quickly on an interest. Often they'll zoom in really fast and have to get out again. So if I have things like that available, then pretty soon they'll move from one author to another and then get into some areas that they really enjoy. As Mrs. Coleman mentioned and Mrs. Hammock, kids this age really don't like people hovering over them and trying to force them into reading certain things. So I don't do that, but I try to be always available if students have questions and need some assistance.
Okay. What reading materials seem to be popular among teens?
Well, I noticed the girls like especially stories about the teen fears, in other words, their own lives, what goes on or what doesn't go on. They like mysteries. They like gloom and doom, especially death and dying books for this age. They like fantasy. The boys like adventure, mysteries, sports, science fiction, that sort of thing. And they begin to branch out into some of the adult books at this age, too.
Okay. Do you mind sharing with us your favorite book?
My favorite book is called Homecoming. It's by Cynthia Voigt, and this is the first book in a series of stories about the same characters that Mrs. Coleman mentioned in Dicey's Song. And it's the beginning of their saga of survival after they were abandoned in a car in a shopping center parking lot. I like the strong characters, and it's really a good story.
Thank you. And thank you all for taking the time to answer some questions and sharing with us your favorite books. Speaking of books, I am reading one by the name of White Fang by Jack London, and it's just excellent. So far, I've just begun it. And, well, this concludes our discussion on encouraging reading. Thank you.
Those talented students at Wayzata West Junior High School, taught by Mary Coleman and other faculty members, planned and presented those lively looks at reading. And now on to Folwell Junior High in Minneapolis. Good morning. We're here at Folwell Junior High in Minneapolis with teachers Sue Keenan and Tom Reinan, who are probably among the most passionate educators in Minnesota about encouraging kids to read and sharing their enjoyment of books and reading with their students. Sue, I've heard you at the University of Minnesota. You have some very interesting ideas about how to introduce children and young people to reading.
That's right. Reading is a real important part of my life, and when I get excited about a book or a poem, it's only natural that I'm going to bring that enthusiasm into the classroom and introduce the kids to those books and those poems that interest me. And I tend to do that a lot in the classroom. That's one way that I get them enthused.
Tom, how long have you and Sue worked together?
This is our second year working together at Falwell with these 7th graders, and part of the thrust of our program is to get them interested in reading, and that's something that we work real hard on with kids.
Judging from the looks of the room, you're doing a lot of things to interest them in reading. There's a big map back here. What is that for?
This fall, the map depicts an island that I took the kids on an adventure to. And what it actually was a simulation of Golding's Lord of the Flies. And one of the projects was to create a map given clues. And so that's an example of one of the maps that one of the students did. From then we went through just a series of events that occur in Lord of the Flies that the kids acted out in class. And then the final activity of this whole project was to view the movie Lord of the Flies, and then the kids that wanted to read the book on their own did so, and about 5 or 6 of them did. So that was exciting to get them turned on to that book, because that isn't one that kids today are reading too much. But I think they love doing the island adventure. They may feel differently, but I think at the time they enjoyed it.
You've got some beautiful stained glass windows back here, too.
Okay, yeah, the stained glass windows were done by both the 7th and 8th graders. We took a look at Marc Chagall's Jerusalem windows, and we talked about how stained glass was used to represent a story or something literal, and the artist creates a visual image of it. So the students chose either a poem, a book, or a song, and then visually interpreted it. Madeline, would you like to talk about your stained glass window? which is right over there.
I did this one on one of the poems which Miss Keenan had us read when we were doing our poetry, whatever you call them, units. And there was one poem which I really liked, and it was called Red Mushroom by somebody. I couldn't find it in the book afterwards. And I really liked it because it sounded neat, and I kept getting these images from what they wrote, and it just was really interesting. So I took 3 of the lines, which was a spark of fire, a drop of blood, and the ferns, and I just made sort of a picture of them and joined them together with the colors.
Thank you, Madeline. Fascinating project. I've heard you talk about using current fiction to teach children the novel.
Right. A lot of my students come from a background where they may not have books all over their house. And so Tom and I both do a lot of reading aloud. And a lot of kids just aren't readers, so we have to hook them where they are. And a lot of times that may mean hooking them with S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders. Last year, Tom and I read The Outsiders out loud, and we had a kid read the book 10 times, which I think is just great. And from reading aloud, they're more apt, I think, to go to the library and check out a book that's appropriate for them. So yeah, we do that a lot, and I try to keep abreast of what's coming out in adolescent literature, you know, because adolescent literature can become so dated depending on what the author chooses to put in the book. You know, Guess Jeans may be in right now, but they're not going to be in 5 years from now, and that tends to date a book. So I like to keep abreast of what's happening.
Tom, tell us about the sustained silent reading that you do in the classroom every day.
Well, every day we take about 20 minutes to a half hour of our class time and have the students read a book of their own choosing. And the sustained silent reading means just that. We at first, it's kind of a struggle with some of the kids to get them to settle down and be quiet with a book, but as time goes by, we notice that it's less and less of a problem to get them reading, and at times they're even, they want to go on and finish up what they're working on at the time. So it's been real, I think, a useful thing for getting these kids interested in reading, just by maybe forcing them to sit down with a book, and as they get into the book, they find that they're enjoying it.
And you and Sue are sitting here at the same time reading too?
Oh, a lot of times I don't notice what's going on around me because I'm in my own book.
Are the students ever interested in what you're reading?
Yeah, a lot of the times they'll pick up a book that we're reading and page through it just to see what we're up to. I think that's real important. I know that I was reading In Country, and I want to say that the author's Bobby Mason, and for some reason it is. I'm getting the okay from one of the girls. And I read this book, and I thought, gosh, this is fantastic. And I was reading it not for an adolescent literature class, but for an English class over at the U, and I immediately thought of my student, Becky Wallace, and I thought, well, she's got to read this. And so I gave it to her, and Becky, do you want to say anything about it?
It was real good. It was real good. It was about a young girl who had an uncle who was in the Vietnam War, and he had Agent Orange, or so they thought, and it was just and she lived in it wasn't even really a town, it was more like a township, and she was just living through it. And
yeah, I kind of want to ask...
The shadow of the Vietnam War, it seemed like.
I kind of want to ask you, how did that make you feel to have me be excited? I mean, I'm saying that I think it's good that I'm excited about a book, and I want to rush and give it to you. How does that make you feel to have a teacher come and give you a book that she or he thinks that you're going to love?
I don't know, just special. Yeah, but I don't know, it kind of makes me see the kind of reading that you would like more. It would kind of surprise me that you would like a book like that. It was real, like, deep. I can see why you would like it, because it had a lot of meaning and all that, but I don't know, kind of like...
Do you think you would have picked that book up off the library shelf on your own?
Probably not. I doubt it, you know.
Okay. So then it's my labor go
Your thesis is proven true. What about some of the independent projects that you've had the students working on this semester?
Some of the independent projects had to do with the Westing game. They were given a choice of 3 to 5 projects, and they were asked to read the book on their own and then complete one of the projects. I also had them do a book review of a Newbery winner. I had to get a classic in there. I was amazed. It was a learning experience for me because as I passed out the list of winners, many of the students had said, oh, I already read this book. I read this book. I read this book. So I think in a way it made me feel that, yeah, let them read what they want to read. Let them binge on Judy Blume because eventually their tastes are going to mature and their skill level is going to improve, and they're going to go off and find the books that we as adults think are fantastic literature. So that was real encouraging for me. What were some of the other independent projects? The paper cranes that are hanging around the room is something that the 7th graders have done. Tom and I read Sadeko and the Paper Cranes to them out loud, and then we got the origami paper and they sat for a couple of days folding cranes, and so that brought the book home to them, and I think they enjoyed doing that. What are some of the other independent projects? Can you think of any? Oh, the 7th graders do independent projects with the outsiders as we read that aloud to them.
Well, it sounds exciting. We've got a whole room full of eager students. Let's go over and talk to some of them about what their reading interests are.
Okay, great. A lot of times parents and librarians don't think that kids read on their own. Maybe they see them outside doing other things or plugged into the TV set. And since Tom and I have started sustained silent reading in our 7th grade program in the morning, we've noticed a real increase in the amount of books that kids are reading. And that may have to do with a lot of factors. We tend to read to the students aloud quite a bit. Tom and I are both avid readers, and we model that skill to the students daily. Melissa, how many books do you think you've read this year?
About 20.
About 20, maybe more. What kind of books do you like to read?
All kinds.
You like romances a lot, don't you? Yeah, we're not real picky on what the kids read as long as they're reading. I think that's the first step in getting a child to read is to hook them into it and let him just take off on his own. Josh, what kind of books do you like to read?
I like to read a lot of fantasy books. I really like the Pardain Cycle, which is a series of 5 books by Lloyd Alexander. I pretty much like to read books that are in a series because I like to finish one book and then have more to continue on with. So it's like a very long story. And right now I'm reading the Xanth series by Pierce Anthony. I'm in the 2nd book, about finished with that.
I like to read fantasy books, like Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, Restaurant at the End of the Universe. I like those kind of books. They make me laugh and then they're interesting.
Good.
I like the series too.
Good. Eric?
I like to read like Louis L'Amour and Western Adventures and stuff like that. I think it's really interesting.
When do you guys read the most?
Usually before I go to bed.
Before you go to bed. Joel, what do you like to read?
Anything that sort of pops off the shelf at me. I just take whatever looks good.
I'm like Josh. I like to read the series of books like the V.C. Andrews series, about the family that's sin in the eyes of God.
Katina, you've read a lot since you've come into the class. How many books have you finished since you came into the class about 3 weeks ago?
I don't know.
About 3 or 4?
Yes.
Yeah, you've really done a good job. And Lorenzo and Emmanuel, what are the kind of books you like to read?
Mysteries.
Mysteries, and you like the choose your own adventures, don't you? Okay, Anita, you're talking about poetry.
Yeah, this is one of the books, of course, that you let us read, and I found a lot of poetry that I really liked. And I guess the best thing I found out about poetry
was that it's not just fairies and fields. It's anything you want it to be. You can make it anything that you like or anybody else likes.
Okay, good. Becky, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I always liked poetry, but I never I liked more to write it before I got into your class. But then I started discovering some new ones. Like you really got me into E.E. Cummings. I mean, I have read so much of his stuff. I mean, I have read everything I could of his so far.
Oh, that's great.
And things like that. I read more of it now than I write.
Oh, that's great. I do think that that's important, that if a teacher's excited about a book or a poem, that excitement is going to carry through to the students, and they're going to be more apt to take off with the book or to take off with a poem. I used a lot of the Compass books when I was teaching these kids to read poetry and to write poetry, and brought in that wide populace of the Minnesota poets. What do you like to read, Renee?
Well, I'm like Laura. I like to read everything from the same author, like V.C. Andrews and Stephen King. Sometimes Judy Blume, just anything.
Right. Well, as you can see, reading is alive and well at Falwell. Both fiction, mystery, poetry, and we have a great bunch of kids over here that love to read.
One of the other ways you two motivate your students is through using current films to get them hooked into reading.
Yeah, that's right. We find that the kids get a real different perspective on a movie when we've read the book with them beforehand. Good example is The Outsiders. We read the book in the class, and then at the end after the discussion, we show them the movie, and they really get a better understanding of what's happening in the movie, and it encourages them to do the same thing with other book-movie combinations that are out. We've done that with That Was Then, This Is Now. Sue, what are some of the other?
The Acorn People, Tex by S.E. Hinton. I've even noticed a lot of the kids will go see a movie, and then you know how the screenplay will come out in book form, and they'll pick that up. That's not as often as us reading the book and then seeing the film, but at least they're making that comparison.
Learning to be critical viewers as well as critical readers.
Right.
Some more great ideas about reading from the students and faculty at Folwell Junior High in Minneapolis.
Spooky and eerie things happen in Coventry when Dr. Dredd's Wagon of Wonders comes to town. Stuart Mead, the town storekeeper, or Stew Meat as everyone calls him, tells the story of that frightening summer. Dr. Dredd and his wonders appear in Coventry during the worst drought in memory, and the town's desperate need for a drop of water leads them to make a deal with Dr. Dredd for rain that they soon learn to regret. The townfolk unite and rally to battle Dr. Dredd to save Calvin Huckabee, the boy who makes rain, and really to save themselves from the seeds of greed that Dr. Dredd plans to plant in them. And so the battles began. First, Antiochus, who was last defeated by Hercules. A burly, sweaty fight ensues. Second, the Black Knight, huge and monstrous, glittering in the dark. And finally, the bulging-muscled, leathery-winged, fork-tongued, fire-breathing dragon. The final battle is a mighty one, complete with thrashing dragon, fire, thunder, and lightning. But the good folks in Coventry prevail, and Dr. Dredd is reduced to a pile of white dust. The perfect answer for an older elementary reader who loves action, adventure, suspense, excitement, and loves being scared silly is Dr. Dredd's Wagon of Wonders by Bill Brittain.
Dr. Dredd's Wagon of Wonders by Bill Brittain, reviewed by Nan Nystrom-Hilk, Children's Services Librarian at the Maple Grove Community Library. Join us again next time for All About Kids.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency.